So happy Easter. It's Monday morning, the day after Easter. So, we went through a few more videos this weekend than normal. Another last, Easter concluding thought that I wanted to share that is one that has always stuck out to me. And has always challenged me at a lot of points, just kind of helping me evaluate where my perspective is at different times and situations. And, I found out for me personally, so much of life is based on my perspective, how I'm viewing the situation I'm in, the way that I'm choosing to go about the interactions in those circumstances and situations. Life is not about your circumstance, it's about your view of the circumstance and the way that you're able to respond to it based on your view. And we see this in Luke 24. This is verses 13 through about 21 we're going to read. But the cool part about this is not only right after the resurrection. Okay, so Jesus has died. He's now resurrected. But the amazing thing is we talked about a couple sessions ago, I don't remember, but we talked about how Jesus, when he said, "I am," everybody dropped to their knees, and talking about how big God is, how massive he is. Well, the cool part about this is as big and great and huge and creator-like and I am as God is, he chooses to show himself to two people in individual conversations along the road. It wasn't in this big group setting. It wasn't in this huge, massive auditorium. He just simply comes up beside these two disciples and begins to talk with them in a very personal, intimate way. And that's the crazy paradox about God, is he's the huge creator of the universe, and yet he is deeply, intimately woven into our life. And it's something that I just love about God. And so, verse 13:24, it says, "Now the same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything they had discussed. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up along them and began to talk with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked what they're discussing, and they stood still, their faces downcast, and one of them, named Cleopas, asked him, 'Are you only a visitor to Jerusalem and do not know the things that have happened?' And he asked, 'What things?' Then they said, 'About Jesus of Nazareth.'" So they're talking to Jesus about Jesus, which is kind of funny and ironic, but he was a prophet. He was powerful in word and in deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. And here's the key part here in verse 21. "But we hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it's the third day since all this took place. And in addition, some women amazed us, and they went to the tomb early this morning, but they couldn't find the body." See that verse, in verse 21, he says, we had hoped he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. The irony of that statement is he just did. Not only did he redeem Israel, he redeemed all of mankind. See, the problem with these two disciples is their perspectives were so skewed, they couldn't see the situation or God for who he was or what it was. See, at the time, the Israelites were heavily oppressed by the Romans. That's why they had to go to Pilate and Caesar to get even approval to kill Jesus. They weren't their own nation. They lived within the Roman Empire and were controlled by Rome. And they had these hopes and these dreams that one day they would be their own nation again. And they thought that Jesus was going to be the king that would lead the rebellion and make that happen. See, what their problem was is they were so focused on the taxes they had to pay to the Romans, the oppression of the Romans, their situation, that though they were walking side by side with Jesus, they couldn't recognize him for who he was. Think about how many times we do that in our life. That we're so focused on the situation, the taxes, the problems, the hurts, the habits, and the hang-ups, that though Jesus is walking right next to us, we can't identify him for who he is. So I get the hiccups. Think about that. How many times have you done that? How many times have I done that? Have we been in God's presence and been so focused on the pain of our life that we don't see the promise of our life? We're so focused on the hurt that we don't see the hero. We're so focused on the situation that we're walking next to the Savior and we can't identify him even as who he is. I know for me, I don't ever want to be so blinded by problems that I forget the truth of who he is and what he can do in my life. So don't be like these two disciples. Don't be walking in the presence of God, having a conversation with Him, talking with Him and dialoguing with Him, and not be able to identify Him as God simply because you're so consumed with the problems. Change your perspective. Look at life differently. Take your eyes off of the negative and put it on the positive. Allow yourself to see God, and I think that all of a sudden you're going to realize you're walking on a different road than you realized you were walking on.